Okay. I think we should start, and I wanted to thank Leslie. My name is Anne Marie Casey. I'm the director of the North of Boston Convention and Visitors Bureau. I'm happy to be partnering with my friend and colleague Leslie Gould from the Greater Beverly Chamber. And Leslie, I'll turn it over to you because you were so kind as to invite us to participate with you, and we're very grateful.
Well, I believe in collaborative efforts, and definitely collaborating with you is a joy and a privilege, and it's great to be with you. We are so grateful that all of you have joined us this afternoon because we know how important your business is. We're in the mission. Our mission is to support your businesses, support everything that you do. And for those who don't know me, my name is Leslie Gould. I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Beverly Chamber of Commerce. And both Anne Marie and I have worked with Dan Martinello before from the SBA. He is the Lender Relations Specialist for the Massachusetts District Office for the Small Business Administration. He's done several different events for us. Today we are talking about forgiveness, but we're also talking about the PPP, the second draw, and any other grants that you might have questions on. This is, 2020, we may have turned a calendar year, but the reality is that we are all still, this could be actually a more difficult year for some businesses because maybe they had finances before, they had something in their coffers, and now they're on fumes. So this is critical. We're not out of the woods yet, and we're very grateful that Dan made time for us today. So without further ado, I'm going to send it over to him and remind everyone, keep yourself muted and ask your questions in the chat. We will have a Q&A period at the end, and Anne Marie and I are going to be following that for you. Okay, so without further ado, Dan, it's your floor.
All right, thank you, Leslie, and thank you, Anne Marie, and good afternoon, everybody. And thanks for taking some time out of your day to listen in and learn all about what's new in the world of PPP and small business economic debt relief. There's a lot of different stuff that recently got passed, due to the signing of the Economic Aid Act at the end of December. And I'll try to go over as much of that today as possible. You'll also get if you haven't already, you'll get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation. So I don't want anybody to, freak out. Hey, I got to write all of this stuff down. No worries. We'll provide that to you. You'll have my information and the other contact links on here, as well. So just in this first slide, you'll see here, this is my mean mug, from the SBA office. Again, I'm one of the lender relations specialists. For the state of Massachusetts, there's only myself and two other colleagues that really deal with the loan program. So my other colleagues are Carlos Hernandez and Eli Spyu, and the three of us work with all of the participating PPP lenders when it comes to this program, as well as all of the other flagship programs under the 7A and the 504 micro lenders. And then certainly we field questions from small businesses day in and day out. So my contact information is listed there. If we can't get to all of your questions today and you have a question, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. So again, we're going to go over the relaunch or the Paycheck Protection Program, as well as other things that other different programs that were appropriated due to the Economic Aid Act. But the bulk of the funds, as you'll see, went to the Paycheck Protection Program. Technically, this is the third wave. The first and second wave started in April. Then with the Flexibility Act that was signed by the president at the time, in June, came the second wave with some different changes that happened throughout the process. And as you'll see, there are more changes. That's one thing about this program, for you folks that already went through the first PPP process, you probably know and have heard of and have tried to keep up with the variety of changes that have happened along the way. Well, get your thinking caps on because there's more changes, to come. But hopefully, these things make it a little bit easier, this time around to get, some funding in your hands. So here on slide number 4, we basically have a breakdown here of how the funds were appropriated to small businesses under the Economic Aid Act. So, as you can see here, like I said before, the majority of the funds went to the PPP first and second draw loan. So over $284 billion is appropriated for these two loan programs. Then an additional $15 billion for the Shuttered live venue grant program. We'll talk a little bit about that today. You know, right now we just have high level information that that program is not up and running currently, but I will touch upon what I know of as of today. And then we have an additional $20 billion going to the EIDL Advance program. Again, the economic injury disaster loan, that is another program that's direct loan that's run through the SBA Disaster Center. So that's something that you apply for online. That is not a program that you go to your local lender to apply for. So I'll touch a little bit upon that. You know, remind some folks, because I'm sure at this point there's probably a lot of small businesses out there that may be familiar with it or have entertained going through the application process to some degree. And then there was additional $3.5 billion appropriated for 7A debt relief program. So if anybody on this call is a current SBA lender, so if you've gotten a 7A loan or a 504 loan with one of our participating lending partners, or if you've gotten a micro loan from one of our micro lenders that we've worked with over the years, you probably were familiar with the SBA picking up a certain amount of months of your payments over the course of 2020. So there's been more funds appropriated for that as well, and that program will start to continue in February. And then we have an additional $2 billion for SBA lending enhancements. So when it comes to all of our flagship programs, our normal programs that our lenders use on a day in, day out basis, the 7A, you know, a lot of folks might be familiar with an express loan. You probably heard that term, you know, here and there, or a 504 program, which is utilized to help small businesses maybe expand their business by buying a piece of commercial property or buying larger pieces of equipment. There's going to be some enhancements when it comes to that. We haven't gotten all the official guidance, but I'll go over some of the things that are coming down the pipeline for that, because there's going to be a lot of reduction with guarantee fees that borrowers typically have to pay, some you know, better interest rates for different programs. So you know, look out for that, because that's definitely going to be something that's beneficial to small businesses that are looking to expand, you know, over the next year or so. So here's just a brief overview of the different funding options that are available, you know, right now. So as you can see, this is taken directly from SBA.gov. And, you know, I want to really stress the importance of utilizing SBA.gov for your source of information when it comes to anything that relates to SBA economic debt relief. You know, or these PPP programs, or the economic injury disaster loan, or the Shuttered venue grant program. If you want to find the most up-to-date, you know, accurate information, I implore you to please utilize SBA.gov. I know there are a lot of, you know, different avenues out there to get information, different media outlets. You know, there's a lot of articles about things. A lot of times these articles, they don't have you know, all the context behind the different changes or program eligibility requirements. So when you want to find out that information, please go directly to SBA.gov, because the minute that is posted and we send it out to our lenders is when it actually happens. If you're seeing articles that have speculation, we really can't comment on that, because until something becomes official on our website, and also on treasury.gov is another great source, you know, we really won't have the official answer for you. So just an overview of access to capital during this time of, you know, economic uncertainty with the pandemic. You know, when it came to the Paycheck Protection Program, initially this program started at the beginning of April, and you know, this was a totally new program. Obviously, everybody was dealing, you know, with a totally new situation, business-wise and worldwide, with the pandemic, and you know, there was a lot of angst and uncertainty, you know, when it came to applying for this. And then, you know, as the months went on, there was a variety of rule changes, because again, like this is the first time ever this program's rolling out. This is, you know, the most money going out to the small business community ever for the SBA. I think there's been more funding over the past year in the SBA combined, and in the past, you know, when you combine about the last 15 years of funding that the SBA has done, you know, it doesn't even compare to what we did over the last 12 months. So, you know, when it comes to this time around, this rollout, the SBA is trying to do things in phases. They're not trying to push out every program and all the appropriated funds all at one time. So folks are scrambling around to figure out what they need to do. When it comes to the PPP itself, initially, about a week or so ago, we rolled it out to just a few certain financial institutions called community financial institutions. Here in Massachusetts, there were only about 2 that really fit that criteria. Now, as of last week, all of our participating PPP lenders, whether you're a small credit union or your larger bank institution, they can all accept first and second draw PPP applications at this time. Then when it comes to your shuttered venue grant opportunities, that is going to be rolled out into about 4 phases from what we know right now. So that process still has not started. We have not gotten any official guidance other than just high-level overview information. So they're trying to, kind of do these things in phases, so folks can, have a little bit of time to soak all of this information in. So I want to just go over a couple of the enhancements that happened with the Economic Aid Act. So when it comes to PPP eligibility, also some just updated information on the forgiveness process itself. So, what happened with the Economic Aid Act, it actually opened the door for a few additional organizations that weren't initially eligible to apply for a PPP loan in the first and second wave. So as you can see on the left-hand side, you have your business entities, whether it's partnerships, corporations, LLCs, you have sole proprietorships, independent contractors, self-employed individuals. You had 501c3s, you had 501c19 veteran organizations, tribal businesses. They were all applicable or eligible in the first and second wave. Then now with the Economic Aid Act, it's opened the door for some more organizations. So 501c6, a lot of times you see chambers of commerce that fall under that wheelhouse. And then you also have housing cooperatives, destination marketing organizations, and eligible news organizations that are now eligible for first or second draw PPP loans. But you still, when it comes to the eligibility, there's still going to be requirements based on the size of your business. There's going to be other eligibility criteria that you have to fit when it comes to, do you owe any, are you delinquent on any federal debt? Is there issues with conviction issues with an owner of 20% or more? All of those things that were intact in the first and second wave, that's still going to apply here. That stuff has not changed. Some other stuff here on the right-hand side that's they provided more clarity, not necessarily change, but just a little bit a thorough clarity on your covered period. So initially during the first wave of PPP funding, borrowers were eligible to utilize the funds that they received from their lender in an 8-week covered period. So that covered period started from when the funds were dispersed to you. Then with the Flexibility Act that was signed in June, that opened the door for additional flexibility on how long you had to utilize the funds. So that opened the door for borrowers to utilize a covered period of either 8 to 24 weeks. Now, small businesses can basically utilize the proceeds anytime in between 8 and 24 weeks after the funds are dispersed to them. Okay. And then also, this is big news for a lot of folks, is the SBA will no longer deduct the idle advances from the overall forgiveness amount. So that was big, and this was really confusing. I'm sure there's plenty of folks listening in right now that have either gone through their forgiveness process on their first PPP loan or are going through the process right now and are waiting overall your overall forgiveness from the SBA. So based on what the CARES Act, when that was originally written, the CARES Act basically stipulated that no one business entity could have more than one grant. So the PPP program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan advance, which was that advance that was going to be anywhere between $1,000 to $10,000 if you applied for an idle loan, that for all intents and purposes was supposed to turn into a grant. But since they both fell under the CARES Act, what the SBA had to do was consolidate those two together. So if you applied for a PPP loan and you received an EIDL advance, when it came down to you submitting a forgiveness application, you may have found out from your lender that once the SBA gave final remittance on the forgiveness amount, you might have been anticipating full forgiveness. But since you got that EIDL advance, you ended up with maybe a small bill of $5,000, $6,000, whatever the case may be, that you had to pay back within the terms of the PPP loan. I know that's kind of confusing. So, and it really did cause a lot of headaches. It caused a lot of confusion, both for our lending partners and certainly for our small business community. But now with the Economic Aid Act, that is all going away. So if you're in the process of applying for forgiveness or you have not applied for forgiveness yet, the SBA is no longer going to factor that in at all. So you're not going to need to worry about it. If you've already gotten your forgiveness remittance back and that was deducted from your overall forgiveness, you'll be getting a notification from your lender probably within the next few weeks because the SBA is working with them right now behind the scenes on reimbursing anybody that's received forgiveness and had the EIDL advance factored into their overall forgiveness amount. So, just connect with your lender over the next few weeks. You'll probably, I'm sure they're going to be sending you some sort of form lender that will let you know that, that amount is fully forgiven with whatever interest that you may have incurred at the time. And then also too, the SBA came up with a new forgiveness application that we'll go over in the next few slides. It's called, I wouldn't say it's actually new, it's updated. So we had 3508S, that was application for forgiveness was for loans of $50,000 or below. Now that is going to include all loans of $150,000 or below. So with the PPP program in and of it itself, nationally, the SBA, found that about 86 to 87% of PPP loans were of $150,000 or less. So this forgiveness application is more of a streamlined application where you really don't have to provide, much of the calculation and reduction calculations to your lender. You really just, it's really, the lender is going to be relying on your certifications in most instances, but there's going to be some variances depending on if you're using this form for a first draw forgiveness PPP loan or a second draw, because there's different eligibility criteria and different criteria when it comes to full forgiveness on those two ends of things. So we'll go over both here. So up first, we'll talk about the first draw PPP loan eligibility and who can apply. So basically, it's all your eligible small entities that together with their affiliates have 500 or fewer employees. And this includes, all of those entities that I talked about earlier, your nonprofits, veteran organizations, tribal concerns, self-employed individuals, sole props, independent contractors, and the other entities that I explained that you see here listed on the slide below. Now, this is fairly the same, as it was in the first and second wave. Where it's going to be a little bit different is you'll see over on the second draw. So we'll explain that in a bit. Also, too, when it comes to entities with more than 500 employees, there's going to be certain industries that meet SBA's alternative size standard. So the SBA has an alternative size standard that they can utilize based on gross income. That they can, apply that if they have more than 500 employees, but it's only for these entities listed here. So the businesses with NAICS code that begin with 72, accommodation and food service sectors, and then eligible news organizations with no more than 500 employees per physical location, as well as housing cooperatives. Then there's a little caveat when it comes to the 501c6 organizations, they cannot have more than 300 employees. So that's just the little variances, but overall, most of it's the same for first draw if you have not applied already. So some additional details, so when, what's the deadline to apply? So right now, for both first and second draw, if depending on what stage of the process you're in or you're eligible for, both applications you have until March 31st of this year, 2021. I keep forgetting it's 2021. You know, that's the deadline to apply for either first draw PPP loans or second draw PPP loans. So when it comes to existing PPP borrowers that did not receive loan forgiveness, when you reapply for a first draw PPP loan, if you previously returned some or all of that first draw funds prior to 2/27, you can actually ask for a first draw PPP loan. So, you know, there was an initial like safe harbor that was put into place when this program first rolled out, that if you, for one reason or another, didn't think you need the funds, maybe, you know, a lot of us didn't know how long, you know, everything was going to be shut down, I think at that time, you know, whether it was April or May, and, you know, you felt that you didn't need the funds for one reason or another, you were allowed to send that back to your lender. You know, if that was the case for you, you know, you're still eligible for a first draw PPP loan if at this point in time things have changed and you need to utilize, you know, getting funding under that program. You don't need to go to a second draw because you know, you really didn't end up utilizing those funds, but you had to have made sure that you actually, you know, sent the funds back to your lender, and your lender, you know, taken that in and acknowledged that. First draw PPP loan that only include amounts necessary for payroll costs of the partnership's employees and other eligible operating expenses. You know, that's another big thing. There was issues with partnerships and how do they qualify when it comes to the overall calculation of how much of a PPP loan you can get. So now there's different options for you to ask for your lender to increase your first draw PPP loan based on if you didn't add in your partner's compensation to the overall PPP loan. So these are going to be very limited circumstances when you can ask for a first draw increase. Another one has to do with seasonal employers. So when it comes to seasonal businesses, they initially had to utilize, to do their calculation, they had to take any 12-week period between, I think it was May of 2019 and September of 2019. And that's how they would calculate how much they could get approved for under the PPP loan program. Now, the SBA has opened that up for calculations on seasonal businesses to look at a full year back. So they can get any 12-week period between February 15th of 2019 to February 15th of 2020 and do your calculation that way. If your calculation ends up coming out more than what it did originally when you first applied, you can talk to your lender and request an increase on your first draw PPP. But those are only the few really instances where you can request an increase on that. Mostly everybody here, you know, going on to the second draw, if you've already gotten PPP funds, whether you have applied for forgiveness or not, you're going to fall under a second draw PPP loan. So, you know, here right now, when it comes to the second draw, the SBA and the government as a whole, they're trying to target this a little bit differently the second time around for folks that have already gotten PPP funding. So, you know, generally, you know, if you were eligible for first draw PPP, you're going to be eligible for a second draw. You know, there's going to be a few limitations, a few different eligibility criteria that you do have to meet on the second draw that isn't the same on the first draw. So as you can see here, you know, you can't be a business with more than 300 employees for the most part. You know, you also have to demonstrate at least 25% reduction in gross receipts between comparable quarters in 2019 and 2020. So with that said, you know, that's a big thing. And, you know, there's a lot of examples. So the SBA comes out with guidance that's called these interim final rules. So this is like the overall, you know, guidance, and, you know, that provides different examples on, you know, what a gross receipt, what is considered gross receipts, you know, what quarters can I compare, you know, all of those different things are in there. But what the SBA also did was come out with more of a consolidated version of that. So for each a first draw PPP loan and a second draw PPP loan, on our website, sba.gov, we have what's called these how to calculate forms. And these forms entail not only just how to calculate your PPP loan, whether it's first or second draw, but also how to calculate your 25% reduction depending on your situation. So it gives all of the examples in there. And then a variety of other frequently asked questions are listed in these documents. So it's a much easier flow than trying to go through the guidance that we send all of our lending partners. I think it's more geared towards you, the borrower, to try to, look at, okay, I'm a sole proprietor. How do I calculate my second draw? And then also, how do I calculate my 25% reduction? But for the most part, when it comes to looking at your 25% reduction, you'll have to take a similar quarter year over year and compare the two. So if you're looking at third quarter in 2020 and you want to compare that to third quarter in 2019, you're going to look at that. Do you have at least 25% reduction? And that's a hard 25% right now. So we were on a national call recently with our headquarters, and someone asked the question, what if it's the borrower is at 24.6 or 24.7% reduction based on the quarters that they're looking at? Do they qualify? And right now the answer is no. It's got to be 25% or more. It can't, they're not rounding up like you would see when you do your taxes sometimes. Also too, when it comes to folks in the second draw phase, you want to make sure that you have utilized all of your first draw funds. The lender that you're working with technically cannot disperse the second draw funds to you if you have not utilized all of your funds from your first PPP draw. I don't think we are going to run into too many problems with that, just based on when everybody received their funds and the amount of weeks that they utilized the funds in. But that is one of the certifications that your lender, you're going to see on your application for second draw. Have you utilized all of your PPP first draw funds yet? So just some additional details on second draw. Again, like I said before, March 31st is the deadline if you are looking to apply for a second draw PPP loan. Right now that's what it is. You can go to any lender for both first and second draw loans. It's right now it's open to all. The platform that we use for these applications is open to all of our participating PPP lenders, large and small. And then when it comes to most borrowers, you're going to calculate your maximum amount on your PPP loan relatively the same way you did for your first draw. So you're going to see that the calculations are pretty much the same. You're going to average out your annual payroll costs divided by 12, and then what you're going to do is take that monthly average and times it by 2.5, and then that's where there's a little bit more to the calculation, but overall that's the basis of it. And then you'll come out to whatever your PPP loan is. When it comes to the second draw, the maximum loan you can get is $2 million. Okay, so the first draw was at 10 million in the first and second wave. It's still at 10 million for the folks who haven't applied for that first draw. But when it comes to second draw, if you got a $3 million loan in the first draw, the max you're going to be able to get is a $2 million loan in the second draw. So the only time this is going to be different when you're computing your overall PPP amount is if you are in that accommodation and food sector, service sector, that NICS code 72. You can actually calculate using 3.5 times the average monthly payroll. So, just keep that in mind. That's a bit of an advantage for some of the businesses that were hit the hardest during this pandemic. But your overall PPP loan still cannot be more than $2 million in both scenarios. So just to continue on with some second draw loan information, PPP second draw loan applicants must use the new SBA form 2483 SD. Okay, so just make sure, because there's multiple applications out there. There's been revisions to a variety of different applications. Make sure you're always utilizing the most current. The easiest way to do that is probably to connect with the lender that you're working with, because a lot of lenders, what they're doing is they're working with third parties to have you submit these applications in an online format. So make sure whoever you're working with, find out what's the best method for you to apply, because some are going to take paper applications and others are going to have you go to their website, direct you to a website that they want you to apply on. And then when calculating the borrower's payroll cost for the second draw PPP loan, you can use either the 12-month period prior to when the loan was made or your calendar year 2019. So that's one benefit if you go to the same lender you did before. If you utilizing the same 2019 as the basis for calculating your PPP second draw loan, and you go to that same lender, there's really going to be no need for you to provide additional payroll documentation to support your loan request, because your lender should already have received that information at this point. So there's going to be, those little benefits that if you're in the second draw, that you can, take advantage of and hopefully make the process a little bit faster for you. But by no means do you actually have to go to the same lender. So the guidance specifically says that a borrower does not have to utilize the same lender for both first draw and second draw PPP loans. So maybe if you didn't have a good experience or you weren't able to get through in that first wave and you want to try out another lender, you can. Just keep in mind the lenders are still going to need to identify you as a business, so they're going to have to do their normal banking identification procedures that pertain to the different bank security that's put in place. So you'll probably have to, I'm assuming, maybe open an account. They'll probably have to, get, documentation about your business, articles of incorporation, things like that, to identify your business and who the true owners are. So, just keep that in mind. If you're going to someone that you don't have a relationship with, you'll want to have that handy, because I'm sure they'll ask for it. And then, again, when it comes to the simplified forgiveness process, they're really trying to help out the businesses that have loans of $150,000 or less. So when it comes to that revenue reduction in the second draw loans, if your loan is going to be for $150,000 or less, technically you do not have to provide the documentation that supports your revenue reduction. You don't have to provide that to your lender until you submit your forgiveness application. Okay, but again, still try to communicate with your lender, talk with your lender, find out what the best method is. Just have that open communication, with them, because every lender is doing it a little bit differently. But also too, you definitely want to make sure that when it comes to that revenue reduction, if you have any questions on that, I wouldn't wait until your forgiveness, because you don't want to get to that forgiveness time frame and then all of a sudden realize, wait, I really didn't qualify because I didn't have enough revenue reduction over a certain quarter over quarter comparison. So, just keep in mind that you should probably make sure that you know that you qualify based on revenue reduction prior to applying, or at least have that documentation on hand. So how can the PPP loans be used? So the Economic Aid Act really opened the door for additional uses for the proceeds that you're receiving. So initially there was a lot of questions over the course of the year of when it came to, especially for eligible non-payroll expenses, there was a lot of questions that small businesses had on if they could use their funds for this or that along the way. And, guidance at the time just wasn't out, and they left it very open to interpretation. But now they've really kind of covered most expenses, I think, across the board. So when it comes to payroll, all of the same payroll costs that you could utilize PPP funds for in the first and second wave are going to apply for the second draw PPP loans, or if you're haven't gotten a PPP loan, your first draw. So when it's commissions, your general wages, tips, all of that stuff. When it's cost related to your continuation of your group health care, life, disability, vision, dental benefits, paid sick leave, medical, family leave, and group health care, life, disability, and dental insurance premiums. All of those things are going to apply as far as eligible payroll expenses. And then when it comes to your non-eligible, non-payroll expenses that are eligible, most of the same will apply with the additions of some of the items that you see here on the right hand side of the slide. So when it comes to your utilities are still eligible, your mortgage interest, your lease payments, those things are still eligible as they were in the first and second go around, but they've opened the door for more expenses. So payments for, any business software or cloud computing services that facilitate business operations. I don't want to read through every one of them. My eyes start, getting cross-eyed on this, but, human resources, sales and billing functions, inventory, record keeping, records and expenses tracking, all that stuff, will apply. Additionally, you have covered property damage costs. So if you had any damages due to any vandalism or looting during public disturbances over 2020 that weren't actually covered by your insurances, you can utilize the funds to cover those costs. Also too, worker protection equipment and other features that surround PPE type of equipment or health regulations, all of that now applies. So, if you had to buy PPE equipment for your staff, or you had to, put up those cough or sneeze guards, at your bar, or you had to make an addition onto your location and have outdoor seating, things like that, all of that can now be covered are now covered as eligible non-payroll expenses. So one thing to keep in mind though, when it comes to your overall forgiveness and if you want to be ultimately fully forgiven for these loans, as far as how much you can utilize for payroll versus non-payroll, those percentages are still the same when you're looking to get fully forgiven on these loans. So you have to at least use 60% of your PPP funds during a covered period for eligible payroll expenses, and no more than 40% of your PPP funds for eligible non-payroll expenses if you're intending to get fully forgiven for your PPP loan. And just some additional details on the terms. Again, like I said earlier, whether it's first or second draw PPP loans, borrowers can now elect to utilize those funds anywhere between 8 and 24 weeks. That will be considered your covered period. That's not something you need to let your lender know at the time you're applying. That's just a business decision you make. So you can select any time in between 8 to 24 weeks from the day the funds were dispersed to you. And then, when you're utilizing the funds, you want to make sure that you're still maintaining employee compensation levels. You want to make sure that loan proceeds are spent, on payroll costs and those other eligible expenses. And again, like I said, at least 60% of those proceeds should be spent on payroll costs if you intend to get fully forgiven on these loans. And then also, just in general, these loans are 100% guaranteed. These are 100% guaranteed on behalf of the lender, not you, the borrower. So the lender, what happens with these loans is it's not like typical lending that if you were going in and grabbing filling out an application for a small business loan and working with a bank or a credit union or whatnot, most times, the banks are going to be checking your credit. They're going to be checking to see what collateral you have available. They're going to be looking at, the last several years of your tax returns and verifying those with the IRS. They're going to be, looking at projections and looking at for you to maybe put up personal guarantees. All of those things are typical for conventional lending and for SBA lending in all of our flagship programs. However, with the PPP loans, none of that applies. So that's why the SBA is guaranteeing these loans 100% on behalf of the lender, as long as that they're doing their due diligence and providing a good faith review of your application. So the lenders are really relying on you, the borrower, to certify that you are eligible for these PPP funds, okay? And please just make sure to work with your lender with whatever documentation that they require. When it comes to the interest rate, doesn't matter what lender you use, every PPP loan is at 1%. They're all going to be at a 5-year maturity. And remember, these are processed by our participating lenders. This isn't an application you can submit to Dan over at the Massachusetts district office. We don't accept applications, we don't process applications, and we don't review the applications. And again, the lender is relying on you, the borrower, to certify that you are eligible based on the guidance given. And then the loan amounts, they should be, for the most part, you're going to take your average monthly payroll, times it by 2.5 to get your PPP loan amount. Unless you're in that next code 72 for second draw, you can utilize 3.5 times your monthly average payroll. All right, so we're going to go on to a bit of the next phase when it comes to PPP loan forgiveness steps. So this is just a general overview, because to try to do both of these in the presentation will probably be here for 3 hours. So we can always do a full in-depth forgiveness presentation at a later time for everybody as well. But overall, you want to make sure that you contact your PPP lender and complete the correct forgiveness application. So as you can see here over on the right hand side, there are 3 available applications, and they've all been revised within the last week. The most used are probably going to be your first 2 that you see here, the SBA Form 3508S and the SBA Form 3508EZ. This is probably going to pertain to 80% or more of the PPP loans that are given out. That 3508S now is your streamlined version for loans $150,000 or under. There was a lot of talk about coming up with a new application, but basically what the SBA did was just revise the application that was already out there for loans of $50,000 or under, and now include loans up to $150,000 or under. So once you figure out which application applies to you, you want to compile any supporting documentation. So you're going to need different supporting documentation, whether you're doing a forgiveness application for a first draw PPP or a second application. And we get a lot of questions on that lately. Can I consolidate both PPP loans and do one forgiveness application? The answer is no, because they both have a bit of different criteria to them, different eligibility concerns. The funds were used at 2 totally different covered periods, so you have to actually do 2 forgiveness applications if you received 2 different PPP loans. And then you want to make sure that you submit that forgiveness form and documentation to your PPP lender. And this is why it's good to communicate with them, because just like I said before, there's a lot of lenders that are doing these applications for second draw PPP loans online. The same thing comes when it comes to forgiveness. A lot of our participating lenders are wanting borrowers to submit their applications via their online platform. So figure out, find out from your lender what the best method is. And then just continue to communicate with your lender throughout the process. So basically the general rundown of the forgiveness process is, once you submit your forgiveness application and any supporting documentations that are required with it to your lender has 60 days to submit that application to SBA's online forgiveness portal. The SBA imposed a 90-day brand promise on sending back the lender a final forgiveness remittance. Realistically, what's going on right now is the pipeline for forgiveness applications is very long. So some loans are going over that 90-day threshold. If you're one of those borrowers that maybe haven't gotten an answer, within that time frame, I wouldn't worry too much. The majority of what we see when it goes over, it just has to do with overall volume. based on, the forgiveness team and how many applications they have in at one time versus there really being anything wrong. There are loans that go into review. Those are sporadic for your smaller loans, but anything that's 2 million or above goes in for an automatic review. If your loan goes into automatic or goes into a review status, expect your lender to be reaching out to you because the SBA probably sent them a notice of additional documents that they want to see to make sure that you are eligible for forgiveness. Now, the SBA is doing just sporadic oversight review. So this is why it's very important that even though, if you had a smaller PPP loan, it's very important for you to keep track of all of your payroll expenses, all of your calculations, all of your HR concerns. So, your hirings, your firings, your hour changes on your employees, things like that. Because just because you might not need to supply it initially with your lender, you may need to supply it if your loan does go in for review. And they are, for oversight reasons, they are randomly checking small loans. I've seen a loan as small as $2,000 go in for a review. And so the biggest update happened with the 3508S. So that's why I wanted to kind of touch upon this a little bit further. So when it comes to the 3508S, again, it's loans $150,000 or under that can utilize this forgiveness application. And it can be utilized for either your first draw or your second draw PPP application. A lot of times too, we get questions on, well, how long do I have to submit a forgiveness application? Because, I think there's various information that's out there and folks get confused on when they actually have to apply for forgiveness. But basically, you have 10 months after your covered period ends to submit a forgiveness application to your lender that you worked with. So you have time on these first and second draws if you haven't done so already. We get a lot of small businesses, sometimes they get a little nervous because they're coming up on their covered period and they think they need to submit that forgiveness application right away. That's not the case. You have 10 months from the day your covered period ends to submit a forgiveness application to your lender. So this application is going to require fewer calculations and less documentation for eligible borrowers. It does not require borrowers to show the calculations used to determine their loan forgiveness. However, SBA may request that information and documents to review those calculations as part of its loan review or audit processes. So keep in mind, just because we're not asking you on the application for those calculations doesn't mean your loan won't go into review and you'll be asked to supply that in the future. So if this loan forgiveness application is being submitted for a second draw PPP loan, the borrower must submit simultaneously to its lender documentation supporting the gross receipts reduction certification on the borrower's loan application. So that's why it's important. When it comes to applying for a second draw PPP loan, like I said earlier in the presentation, you're not, if your loan's $150,000 or less, you're not required by the guidance to provide your reduction information to your lender during your second draw application, but during forgiveness time, you will need to supply that to your lender. So it's really, it would be in your best benefit to know that you are eligible during application process rather than finding out, during forgiveness process that, maybe you were at that 24.6%, like I was saying earlier for that example. It's got to be 25% or more on, of a revenue reduction quarter over comparable quarter. All right, so then we're just going to go over a little high level overview of the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant Program. So this is something that's totally new. So like I said, I can't really provide you as much detail today as I would like, because we've only really gotten about a 15-minute overview ourselves, and this is a totally new program to the SBA. So they're still developing all of the official guidance and the meats and potatoes to how this is going to work and roll out and how it's going to benefit certain small businesses. So so just to go over the program funding, there was about $15 billion appropriated to this. They're going to set aside about $2 billion to businesses that were affected the most under these certain industries that you can see below. So usually your smallest industries that may have had 50 full-time employees or less. This is going to get rolled out in about 4 phases from what I know over the next few months. Also, what I know is this is not going to be a grant program that you're going to apply at a lending institution. From what I know right now, this is going to be done online through SBA.gov, probably similar to how the economic injury disaster loan is done. So you're going to be applying, directly online. I don't know how thorough this application is going to be at this time. We have not gotten our hands on any copy of the application, but once we do, we will make sure we disperse that to the small business community. So here are some of the businesses that will fall under, as far as eligibility goes for this grant program. Now, these are 6 bullets. I don't know if there's going to be more or less when the official guidance comes out. So just keep that in mind. So you have your live venue operators or promoters. You have your theatrical producers. You have live performing arts organization operators, relevant museum operators, motion picture theater operators. You have your talent reps, and each business entity and an eligible entity owns that also meets the eligibility requirements. So, some of these eligibility requirements, we just don't know at this point in time. So when we get the meat and potatoes on that, I will definitely disperse that to you. And just here's some other things you want to consider that we know of right now. You as the small business concern must have been in operation as of February 29th, 2020. That's a little bit different than when it comes to the PPP program. The PPP program, you have to be in business as of February 15th, 2020. So there's about a 2-week difference to that. And then venue or promoter must have not received a PPP loan. So this is important, and I don't want to get people confused, because I'm sure a lot of you on the call right now probably have received a first draw PPP, okay? And maybe you're going through the forgiveness process or whatnot. If you've received a PPP in your first or second wave, you will be eligible to apply for this Shuttered venue grant. You will not be able. You're gonna have to basically figure out. You're going to have to make that choice on whether you want to get a second draw PPP loan or go for this Shuttered venue operator. You're not going to be able to do the second draw loan and the Shuttered venue operator grant. So you're going to have to make that decision. And I'm sure, most folks, when you get the official guidance, you'll be able to kind of better make the best decision for your, business organization. One other thing to note on that, when it comes to the other option, you have that economic injury disaster loan. You can have the economic injury disaster loan with this Shuttered venue operator or with the PPP. You just cannot have PPP and the Shuttered grant together. So that's the one caveat there. So we're still waiting for detailed information to come out on eligibility requirements, and then so far, what we know right now is priorities will be anticipated for the smallest entities and the hardest hit. And it looks like they're going to look at how many full-time employees you have, and then also your overall revenue reduction between April of 2020 and December of 2020. Those will be the 2 big factors when it comes to anticipated preference on this. And then just going on to some different enhancements for SBA lending programs. So right now we have not received any of the official guidance when it comes to this. So that's why I just put that up in red there, because what I'm telling you right now is not really official yet until we get that guidance. But we got a high level overview. So some of the things when it comes to our flagship program. So we're going to see temporary enhancements to the terms of our 7A loan program. So our 7A loan program, has a variety of sub-programs, that our lending partners use to provide access to capital, to the small business community. So we're looking at potentially loan guarantee increases from 75 to 90%, offering reduced or no fees that are typical for these programs to borrowers and to lenders. So right now I don't know if there's going to be a certain amount of reduction in fees or just fee waivers altogether. They're going to try to see what they can do with the amount of funds that were appropriated for this. And then temporary increases to the 7A Express loan limit to up to $1 million, and that will last until October 1st of 2021. We a lot of times you'll see that the SBA has October 1st when it comes to temporary increases and things like that, and that's because our fiscal year ends at the end of September each year, and the new fiscal year starts on October 1st of each year. So keep that in mind. And the 7A Express program, that's typically our most popular loan program for our lending partners to use because it's really mainly the only program that can be utilized for a small business that they're looking to give a revolving line of credit for. So so that's why it's really heavily used right now. The limit is the maximum amount lender can utilize under that program is $350,000. So it looks like it's going to be increased to $1 million, and then when it gets reduced, it's going to go to $500,000. So that's a plus on that end of things. And then there's going to be some temporary elimination of fees on the 504 program and some favorable terms for refinancing 504 loans or financing loans. So, I don't know what that entails yet. So once we see that, we'll make sure we disperse that to the small business community. And then increases the aggregate loan limit for our microloan intermediaries in order to ensure intermediaries have increased capacity to make loans to the underserved and underbanked borrowers. The microloan program is another great program. We have we have about 8 or 9 micro lenders that work within Massachusetts, and they provide small businesses access to capital, usually funding of no more than $50,000. So that looks like there might be some appropriations that will increase that for a temporary period of time. They really, these organizations try to help your women-owned small businesses, your disabled veteran-owned small businesses, your other disadvantaged small businesses, new small businesses, sometimes small businesses that may have issues with credit and they need need additional technical assistance with that. A lot of times that's what these micro lenders are working with, and they work with the state and other organizations as well to provide access to capital, not just with the SBA.
Dan,
Then,
I just want to, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. I want to thank you. You have an incredible amount of information. I'm telling you, I just want to thank you so much for everything. The only reason I wanted to just interrupt you for a moment is because we're right around the 3 o'clock time. And I know that folks have, they're in the middle of their workday. And I know they
geez, I talk so much, I don't even know sometimes.
Oh my gosh, you do. Believe me, I have that same thing. But you've done a fantastic job, and I just want to thank you for that. And we had some questions in the chat that I was hoping maybe you could get to before those folks had to jump off.
Yeah. Let's do that, because honestly, like I said, we're gonna give this presentation to everybody, and the last is just about the debt relief. So unless you have an SBA loan, it's not really going to apply to you.
That's great. Again, and the deck is available, the recording's available, and I'd love to get to some of these questions, Dan, just so that, so the first question is, we have Alex is applying for forgiveness for the first time this month using a 3508S. Are there any trouble spots they should watch out for? How is the 100% forgiveness going? Is it happening for most people? And how long is the SBA processing time until final judgment comes back?
Well, that was about 5 questions.
Yeah, and you did answer some of them, but you know what? That's a great question because a lot of people have it. And the last part of that is, should they delay applying for a second draw if they haven't been forgiven for the first one? Because I think that's a big question.
Yeah. So when it comes to forgiveness, I think I kind of touched upon, the general overview. You submit a forgiveness application. If you did that today, your lender has up to 60 days to submit that to the SBA. Then the SBA has up to 90 days to send it back. Now that 90 days is not statutory. That was just more of a self-promotion. Yes, we'll try to get it all back to you. Realistically, that doesn't happen for everybody. You know, some get their forgiveness applications done, approved, reviewed, and forgiven in a few weeks, and others have gone past that 90-day threshold. But like I said earlier, it's not really necessarily that there's any sort of issue. It's just the amount of applications in at one time. So they're working with an overwhelming amount of volume, you know, when it comes to that. But so, you know, really just connect with your lender. If there was any sort of issue that maybe the loan did go into review, the lender gets a notification from the SBA stating XYZ loan is now in review. We need to look at, you know, 5, 6, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 documents. You need to supply this to us within X amount of business days. So they would be reaching out to you to get that information in as soon as possible to start that review process. Now, the review process can, you know, if your loan goes into review, that can take, you know, anywhere from, you know, a few days to, you know, several weeks. It just depends on what it is that they're looking at. You know, if a red flag came up and they were concerned about some sort of eligibility issue, if it was just a audit overview to kind of give oversight to the program, it might be a little quicker there. But there's no real, we don't have like a list of estimated timeframes on those things because it differs for everybody. But for all intents and purposes, I think the biggest hiccup when it came to forgiveness was dealing with that idle advance that got factored into the overall forgiveness amount. So now that folks who haven't applied for forgiveness yet, you're not going to need to deal with that at all. It's not even on the application. It's not asked. And when your lender submits your loan application, it's not even looked at. So you won't have to worry about that piece anymore. For the folks that already submitted a forgiveness application that may have gotten their forgiveness remittance by the SBA is currently working on behind the scenes to get those reimbursed to everybody with whatever interest that may have been occurred. So that's going to take, you know, a few weeks. We'll probably get more information on that in February at this point. But that will eventually get, you know, taken off your books. And then, yeah, I mean, as far as applying for a second draw PPP loan, you don't have to wait for forgiveness on your first draw to apply for a second draw loan. The one thing that you're certifying on the second draw PPP application is that you utilized your first draw PPP funds already. You're not certifying that you've applied for forgiveness or that you've received forgiveness. So, you know, so you can apply for your second draw PPP if you either haven't applied for forgiveness on your first draw or are still waiting an answer on your first draw. Did I answer everything in there?
I think you did. You did really well. Dan, I was going to try and have you stop sharing your screen so that people could actually see you.
Oh, yeah.
Let me try this out. So you can actually see him.
Let me see. Why am I coming? Am I dark?
Yeah, you're still dark. Let's see.
Let me try again.
We saw you before, and I know everybody's got their.
It is not going a good day for me out with Zoom, that's for sure. Yeah, why is it showing up dark? My light's on too on my computer. Oh, there we go.
There you are.
There we go.
Hello, Dan. Everybody, this is Dan. I'm gonna spotlight him for you. So this is Dan, who's been giving us this great information. Dan, thanks again. And
yeah, you're welcome.
And we've got a couple of other questions here. So let's see the turnaround time. Which forgiveness application do independent contracting sole proprietors use? Apparently, with this is my graphic designer. Actually, her lender keeps telling her to wait and send the application in. So she's confused about when to submit it and what to use.
Are we talking about for like a second draw application, or are we talking about a forgiveness application? Do you know?
I I'm pretty sure this is,
But-
it's forgiveness. It's forgiveness. So it's got to be
Forgiveness.
round.
They can use that 3508, that 3508S. Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm assuming their loan's probably under 150,000. They should be able to utilize that, or even the 3508 EZ, too. Yeah. Either one of those are available. They just got revised. I think it was on the 19th or the 18th.
So,
So they're available online. It just, that's what I was saying earlier, is you want to connect with your lender, because the lenders may have shut down their online portals for a little while. Like I've heard from some borrowers saying, my bank, they shut down the forgiveness portal because they're updating their portal due to the new guidance out there. So maybe if they're utilizing an online portal, you'll just want to find out from that lender who, how long that portal is going to be shut down. But for the most part, like the paper applications, if that's what they're accepting, they're already on SBA.gov. They can utilize that 3508S.
Great. How about, for an EIDL loan, and this is an interesting question. So if you're going for another one, do you add to the one you previously had, or do you get
So
another one?
right now, when it comes to the EIDL loans, from what I know from the disaster center, they're really not accepting second applications on that at the moment. If you do apply, I think after like a few days, you'll get like an email saying, you've already had an application in, we're not taking applications. The system won't let you know right away. But because they're still working through the first set of applications that occurred over 2020. They're still trying to, take what was appropriated, the new funds that are appropriated, and, push that out to folks that haven't received one at all yet. So, yeah, I don't think the likelihood of folks getting a additional EIDL loan right now is going to happen. So if we get information that that's opening up for new folks, we'll definitely let everybody know.
Great. So EIDL is not forgivable. That was,
Yeah, EIDL is not. That's a loan. It's a 30-year term. For most business entities, you're looking at a 3.75 interest rate. If you're a nonprofit, it's 2.75 the interest rate. It does have a 12-month deferral period on there. So if you got your loan back in August, your first payment's really not due till next August, or this coming August. Sorry.
got it. And we have another question. Will the second draw PPP be eligible for the same kind of forgiveness as the first? I'm assuming so, but
Yeah, for the most
really
part,
different application, I'm sure.
it's for the most part, as far as keeping your employees intact. If you do have any reductions in employees, just make sure you record them, and they're for certain instances. Maybe you had to fire someone for good cause. Maybe you had to reduce someone's hours because they're dealing with their kid doing virtual schooling and they can't work as many hours. All of those have safe harbors in place that won't affect any reduction in your forgiveness. But the big thing is, when it comes to the second draw, is that 25% reduction. Okay, so
Right.
the first draw doesn't have that. The second draw has that. So you really need to make sure that you're comparing, quarter over quarter, whatever you choose. There's a variety of different scenarios based on when your business was established, or what quarter you want to use, and things like that you want to make sure you fit the mold for at least one of those, because that can hurt your overall forgiveness.
And you only have to do be down 25%, at least 25% in one quarter of 2020.
Yeah, so if you are in business, let's say you're in business the last 5 years, you're operating, you can take one quarter in 2019. Let's say you take the third quarter in 2019. You'll have to compare it with the same quarter in 2020. So if you took third quarter in 2019, you take third quarter in 2020, and you compare it. Was there a 25% reduction or more? Then you're good. If it was 24.5, it's not eligible.
You know, we have a question relative to that too.
Mm.
We have a business that I'm very familiar with, Ryan and Wood. They do a great job. They had a pivot, you know, they're a distillery and they have great vodka, gin, rum, and they pivoted their business.
Sounds like stuff I need.
Yeah, their business right up our alley. We love them. Hello, Bob. They pivoted to helping the community by producing hand sanitizer. And I know we bought a ton of it for our visitor center on I-95. So what if their quarter to quarter revenues are showing not below a 25% decrease, but their margins as to where they used to be as far as the product they supply has greatly changed for them?
Yeah, so they're just doing revenue reduction and gross receipts, and revenue is basically any form of income, not including idle advance or PPP funds. Everything else applies.
So like if it costs them a ton more money to do, you know, to make hand sanitizer than it did for them to create their, you know, for sale spirits, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no. I mean, you know, if you change the way your business operation was, they're just basing it on the overall, you know, revenue, not if you change gears and you did something else and things like that. Yeah, right now, I mean, if that changes, we'll definitely let folks know. But yeah, it's hard to have those one-offs because realistically, this is a national program. So if you were to have those one-off exceptions for everybody, you'd run into thousands of different exceptions, and then to try to have a program that entails 1,000 different caveats to it, that would be kind of tough to handle. I mean, it's already, you know, to try to manage that on top of, you know, all the application flow and, you know, making sure the oversight, you know, that the manpower would need to come up with all those exceptions is, yeah, I don't see that changing, to be honest, you know.
And I thought what I could do, because I got this question in an email, not in this chat, but as an email to me at the chamber. I thought I would forward you, because it was so specific, filled with some other information. I thought I could forward that to you after.
Oh yeah,
this.
yeah. If there's like real specific, yeah, that's, you know, we can, if we don't have the answer, we can always ask. Yeah, we can always try to bring it up the chain. We do get on monthly calls, you know, with the higher command. Right now, we're in a bit of transition phase, obviously, with the new President Biden and his team. And, you know, realistically, right now, we're in that period where we don't have a lot of acting administrators in different areas of the SBA, because most of them were political appointees. So it's going to be a few weeks till we might get some change in guidance due to that, because once they take a look at things, they may, you know, change a few things here and there. But yeah, that's where, you know, those things stand. But we'll definitely can always try to find out if we can get clarity or any answers. You know, it doesn't hurt.
We got another question, just a clarification regarding the EIDL from March, April 2020. And I think they're confused. Is it forgivable?
No, so we're getting a lot of questions from lenders as far as, you know, can you refinance your idle loan into the new PPP? The only idle loans that could be refinanced under PPP is if you got an idle loan between January 31st and April 3rd of last year. In Massachusetts, that should only be about 100 businesses, because when we pulled the number, so it should be very rare that happens. I think it's actually less than 100 businesses that actually got idle funds within that period of time, because most people applied in like March or April, but they didn't get their funds till, you know, May or June, or some I'm still dealing with some that still haven't gotten their funds that applied, you know, in the springtime. So I don't foresee us seeing that too often, just based on the actual overall numbers that applies to.
Great.
See any other questions, Anne-Marie? I
don't no, I don't see any other questions, but I have to tell you, Dan, you've got the hottest topic in town. Everybody has.
Oh, I know.
I really do.
That's really a good or a bad thing here.
Tom Brady, you are the hottest topic in town.
I know, that guy's unbelievable.
Now everybody
still rooting for him.
knows why we're so enamored with the guy.
Yeah.
Well,
Right? All the old haters. But listen,
I know,
here's the
right?
thing. Why don't everyone should have received from Robin Foster this morning, everyone on this Zoom should have received all of the presentation that you saw today. And that includes Dan's information, his contact information. So I will follow up with several emails that I got through the chamber. I will forward them to you, Dan, but I definitely encourage people, not that you want to be bombarded, but I do encourage people to connect with Dan directly. He is extremely accessible and willing to help you as much as he can. He gets pretty much right back to you within an hour or two if he's busy. He's very good like that, so no pressure.
Uh-oh, you're putting a
No,
time on
very
my.
right? Well, no, you know what? You've always gotten back to me before the day's
No,
out.
I
so
know. I'm
that's-
just
I
teasing.
really appreciate that, because sometimes you're waiting a couple of days, quite frankly, to have someone get back to you when you want to get something done. So I do appreciate that. And I'm sure that everyone here on the call appreciates all of your knowledge and the time that you've given us today.
yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
one thing too I want to mention is, the Massachusetts office has our own website, and we have a government email delivery. So if you haven't gone on there yet, just Google SBA Massachusetts, sign up for our Gov delivery, because all of the new information when it comes out, that's how, a lot of the times we get that sent over to the small business community. So, when it comes to that Shuttered grant, Shuttered venue grant program, when it's officially rolled out and people are able to apply, you'll know if you're on that that government delivery email, because we let you know within a few hours of us getting it.
Great.
Perfect.
That's great. Thank you so much. And
Hey, welcome.
recording is finished, and I will make sure to get that link over to Robin so that she can distribute that as well. That would be fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. And Anne-Marie, I'm very grateful to work with you today and on
Yes.
future events as well.
A pleasure. So good.
Yeah, thanks for having me too.
You're very welcome. Dan.
Anytime.
Thank you so
All
much.
right.
All right, we'll see you in a month.
All right.
All
Take
righty.
care.
Thank you very
Bye,
much.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank
everybody.
you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us today. Very grateful for your time.
Thank you.